Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking a closer look at something pretty fascinating, maybe a bit unsettling too.
Hmm.
We're looking at sources like The Psychopath in the Shadows, Chapter 5, and also thinking about Martha Stout's work, The Sociopath Next Door.
Right.
And the core question is this. Could certain traits we often link with psychopathy actually align with success in some jobs?
It's a really provocative question, isn't it?
It is. Have you ever found yourself wondering why some personalities, maybe those who seem a bit emotionally different, sometimes just climb the ladder in really high-stakes fields? Let's dive in.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
We're basically looking at a specific set of characteristics, aren't we? Things like maybe less empathy, more focus on self,
Uh-huh.
and, strong emotional control, maybe being more comfortable with risk, making decisions very objectively.
Exactly. And the whole point is whether these traits, which often get a bad rap, might actually be useful in certain specific professional worlds.
That's the core of it.
So the chapter we looked at really breaks down how this might work. Take emotional control, for example.
Okay.
It talks about how being able to sort of stay detached from strong emotions can help with problem solving. Keep a steady hand when things get tough.
Right. That makes sense. And Stout's work kind of echoes that, suggesting that if you're not tangled up in emotions, you can focus better on the big picture, the long-term goals.
Even if reaching those goals involves, tough decisions that aren't popular.
Precisely. And think about leadership roles. You're dealing with complex situations, lots of pressure, different personalities, being objective, not getting swept away by the emotional tide of the moment. That could be really valuable.
Allows for more rational thinking, a more strategic path forward.
Yeah, exactly.
And that ties into the next point, cool-headed decision-making.
Right.
The source really emphasizes making choices based on logic, efficiency, without emotions getting in the way.
And it points to specific fields like healthcare, law enforcement, the military.
Places where you need quick, critical decisions, often under immense pressure.
And again, Stout's idea comes in that maybe a lack of deep empathy allows someone to stay calm and act decisively when others might just freeze up or get overwhelmed.
It makes you think, doesn't it, about what we actually value in those high-stakes jobs.
It really does. If the main thing you need is fast, clear action under fire, then yeah, maybe that emotional distance is an advantage.
Being able to cut through the noise and just focus on the facts could be absolutely critical. Life or death, even, in some of those jobs you mentioned.
True.
Then there's the fear factor, or rather, the lack of it.
Ah, yes. Fearlessness toward risk.
The chapter suggests this lower sensitivity to fear and anxiety can be a big plus in really dynamic areas, like starting a business or trading on the stock market.
Where taking big risks is often part of the game, right?
Totally. It kind of makes sense. If you're not as worried about failing, you might go for opportunities others would shy away from.
Yeah, though it's important to distinguish, I think, between considered risk and just being impulsive. The source seems to suggest it's more of a different kind of calculation.
Right. Less weighed down by the feeling of potential negative outcomes.
Exactly. It's a different risk assessment.
Okay, now we get into trickier territory. Manipulation.
Hmm. The ability to influence.
The chapter talks about observing and, well, using others' emotions strategically to get what you want. It mentions sales, marketing, negotiation, understanding consumer psychology, and leveraging it.
And this is where the ethical alarm bells start ringing a bit louder, doesn't it?
For sure.
Because while the source points out how effective this might be for hitting targets, it definitely raises questions, about the ethics, the potential harm, if there isn't a strong moral compass tied to empathy.
Definitely a tension there. And to be fair, the source does say these traits aren't a silver bullet. They're not good everywhere.
Right. It explicitly mentions fields like education, social work, places where genuine empathy and collaboration are, like the whole point.
Yeah, and that's where these same traits become major weaknesses. Stout's point about people with these traits struggling to form deep, lasting bonds really hits home here.
Absolutely. You can see how low empathy would be a huge barrier in jobs built on trust and genuine human connection.
So it really highlights how context is everything.
Totally. What works in one place bombs in another. And it also makes you think about what success even means. You might hit some targets short term,
Right.
but long-term success, having a positive impact, that usually takes more, like strong relationships and ethical behavior.
Which might be harder to sustain with these traits. Okay, so let's dig into the specific professions the analysis mentions. First up, lawyers.
Okay, lawyers.
The idea is that emotional detachment helps in those supercharged environments. Courtrooms, intense negotiations, lets you stay objective, act decisively.
And strategic thinking too, right? Seeing all the angles, planning moves,
Yeah.
plus being okay with taking calculated legal risks.
Uh-huh. And those interpersonal skills, again, reading people, influencing juries, or opposing counsel. But it also flags potential problems in areas like family law, where empathy is pretty crucial.
Yeah, you can see how the adversarial system in some legal fields might almost reward that distance. Arguing a case without getting personally invested, treating it like a game of chess, maybe.
Right.
But like you said, law is about people at the end of the day. And in areas needing real understanding, the detachment could be a serious drawback.
Next, surgeons. This one seems almost intuitive.
Yeah, the high-pressure environment of the OR.
Emotional detachment, suppressing strong feelings, seen as key to staying calm. Logical when someone's life is on the line. Stout mentions this too.
And the fearlessness aspect allows for decisive moves, maybe even trying new, potentially risky techniques. Emotional control just makes you seem more reliable during those complex operations.
Even managing the surgical team is framed as a kind of strategic influencing. But the flip side is difficulty building patient trust before or after surgery. That lack of empathy, again, could impact long-term patient care.
Well, in surgery, the absolute need for precision, focus, under crazy pressure, it's paramount, isn't it? Emotions could be disastrous.
True.
So yeah, detachment, decisiveness, they seem like clear benefits. But medicine is also deeply human. You need that compassion for the whole healing process. Big tension there.
Okay, what about the top spot? CEOs.
Right. The corner office.
Here the analysis highlights cold, rational decision-making for strategy, fearlessness for making bold moves entering markets, big investments.
Influencing stakeholders too, employees, shareholders. Resilience under that immense stress, making quick calls when needed. Stout's points on negotiation fit here.
Yeah, but the downsides are pretty stark too. Trouble building trust, potential ethical blind spots, maybe damaging the company's long-term health or reputation.
This is maybe where that alignment seems strongest, at least initially. The corporate world, especially at the top, often demands tough, even ruthless decisions. Focusing purely on the bottom line, taking calculated risks, navigating power plays without getting emotional, it can definitely lead to short-term wins. But the long-term fallout, low morale, ethical scandals, lost trust can be huge.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Journalists and investigators.
Interesting. How do these traits play out there?
Well, emotional detachment is seen as helping objectivity, chasing the truth without bias, especially on sensitive topics like corruption or injustice.
Rationality helps keep reporting factual, even in chaotic situations like war zones or disasters. Composure under pressure is key for investigative risks.
And fearlessness, again, standing up to intimidation, digging for difficult truth, even using strategic influence, manipulation maybe, to get sources to talk. Stout brings this up.
And maybe being less bothered by ethical gray areas, focusing on the story above all.
Exactly. But the potential pitfalls are clear. Damaging trust with sources because you lack empathy, or maybe crossing ethical lines in pursuit of the story.
It's that classic journalistic ideal of objectivity, isn't it? Detachment could theoretically help, but it's a razor's edge.
For sure.
Helping uncover truth is one thing, but ignoring the human cost or journalistic ethics is another entirely.
Next, strategy consultants.
Wow, the ones who come in and shake things up.
Right. So strategic thinking, separating emotion from logic for objective analysis, strong analytical skills, handling difficult issues like downsizing with impartiality.
Navigating conflicts between different groups in a company using social skills to persuade people. And again, fearlessness proposing bold, risky strategies.
Potential downsides. Difficulty building real trust and rapport with clients or colleagues, and maybe pushing for short-term wins over sustainable, ethical, long-term plans.
Consulting often means delivering tough news, recommending big changes, so being objective, data-driven, not getting swayed by people's feelings that can look like a strength. But long-term, a consultant's success really depends on those trusting relationships, and that's where low empathy could really hurt.
What about military leaders?
High stakes again, life and death.
Absolutely. Composure, rational decisions in the chaos of battle, fearlessness inspiring the troops, enabling bold tactics, effective command and control, strategic thinking without emotions clouding judgment.
Makes sense. You need calm, decisive leaders in that environment.
But the challenges are there too. Difficulty fostering deep trust and loyalty if you lack empathy. And the huge ethical complexities of warfare, a potential disregard for those, could be catastrophic.
Yeah, in that extreme context, Calm, strategic thinking, decisiveness, they're vital. Fearlessness can be crucial for morale. But the ethical dimension is massive. Lack of empathy there could lead to truly terrible outcomes.
Okay, shifting to finance. Stock traders.
Fast decisions, high pressure.
Exactly. Quick thinking, ignoring the market's emotional swings, focusing on data, managing risk effectively because you're less fearful, seeing crises as opportunities, processing info efficiently, even being self-focused aligns with the profit motive.
Stout's idea about strategic action fits well here, detaching from the herd mentality.
Downsides mentioned are trouble working in teams, and maybe taking too much risk, leading to big losses.
Yeah, finance, especially trading, it's all about pressure and speed. Detaching from the market's emotions, focusing purely on numbers, seems like an advantage.
Definitely.
But that potential for excessive risk-taking and maybe ignoring the wider impact of trades, that's a real concern.
Two more. Corporate defense or crisis management experts.
The fixers, when things go wrong.
Right. Emotional detachment for logical legal analysis, composure during intense litigation or crises, acting swiftly and rationally under pressure, fearlessness to make tough calls, strategic communication to manage perception. Stout's point on influence applies.
Again, it sounds useful in a crisis.
But again, potential issues with building trust with the client or the team, and maybe prioritizing the short-term fix over long-term ethical health and reputation.
When a company's in deep trouble, you need that calm, strategic response. Objectivity helps cut through the panic. But trust is still crucial. With the client, with the public eventually. And ethical shortcuts in a crisis can backfire badly down the line.
And finally, politicians.
The ultimate power players, perhaps.
The analysis suggests rational decision-making helps policymaking, avoiding emotional bias, leadership through influence and control, navigating conflicts dispassionately, fearlessness for bold moves on the economy or security, resilience against public pressure. Stout's idea of focusing on objectives fits.
Sounds like a recipe for getting things done in a tough environment.
Maybe. But the challenges are huge. Difficulty earning public trust without genuine empathy, and the potential to disregard ethical norms, leading to scandals and cynicism.
Yeah, politics seems like a field where these traits could help someone climb the ladder.
Yeah.
Making tough calls, negotiating hard, weathering storms.
For sure.
But, a healthy democracy needs trust, empathy, ethics. If leaders lack those, the damage can be profound.
So, wrapping up this deep dive, it seems the picture is really nuanced. Certain traits linked to psychopathy might give an edge in specific, high-pressure jobs needing detachment and strategy, but it's absolutely not a guarantee of good success, and the interpersonal and ethical costs can be really significant.
Right. It's not just about whether these traits fit certain jobs, but what it says about the jobs themselves.
Yeah.
What values are we actually rewarding, maybe without even realizing it?
That's a really provocative question, isn't it? As we've gone through these examples, what does it tell us about the priorities baked into some professional paths? Maybe something we need to look at more critically.
A lot to think about there.
Absolutely. It certainly gives you a different way to think about professional life and success. Join us next time on The Deep Dive for another exploration.